and think about a lot. You know, the school districts closed not all the schools in the state, but most of the schools in the state in the spring, and we did distance learning. And I would say that as a parent, it was not the most wonderful academic experience for my 3 children. It's interesting to be the parent of a then kindergartner and 4th grader and to see the vast difference in their ability to learn in that way. I mean, for my 4th grader, it was pretty seamless, actually. You know, he used Google Classroom before the pandemic as a way to write. His teacher had commented always on his writing in that format. So he was able to transition pretty seamlessly, but my kindergartner can't stay on Zoom for more than 10 minutes. I mean, he's got the attention span of a 6-year-old. So, you know, how we meet the needs of the Californians given the situation is something we are really focused on. And that's just sort of, those are the kids that can get connected. And one of the things that we are really aware of is that, you know, the huge education divide that existed before this pandemic is only being exacerbated by the circumstances that we're in. And so closing the digital divide is something that we're very, very focused on, making sure every student has a laptop and access to the internet so that they can continue to learn, since that is now how they are learning. And so, I'm carrying a bill on that will hopefully, we allocated $25 million to closing the digital divide, and we want to make sure that gets into the hands of the students by providing, you know, those devices that they need, and doesn't sit in the administration and not get allocated. So that is one of the pieces of legislation that we are continuing to work on right now. We're hoping for a hearing in the Senate in the next couple weeks on that bill. But we also passed SB 98, which is our education trailer bill. And in that bill, you know, when I first read it, I was very excited because the bill sets standards for distance learning that I thought, having experienced it, were really, really critical. You know, if kids can't be in the classroom, they deserve the same amount of instruction as had they been in the classroom. And we did not see that in the spring. I would say my kids were getting max 5 hours of instruction a week, which is far from what they were getting prior to the pandemic. And so in it, we require that in order to get paid for that student, you have to instruct them the same instructional minutes as you were instructing before. And schools cannot get out of that, or they don't deserve our state dollars. And that is really a protection of students in making sure they get the education they deserve, no matter whether it be in person or distant. And we're seeing different schools in the district take different models. Dublin is using a camera-based model where the teachers, no matter what, will be in the classroom, and the students may or may not be there, but the teacher will continue to teach in the way they generally do in the classroom with a camera. And then if things improve, the kids will be there with them, and if they don't, they'll be at home watching. Other schools are doing it differently, using distance learning modules, but having small group instruction and things like that. So watching what they're doing and making sure that they do instruct the children is really critical, I believe. So that's some of what we've worked on the education space. You may have seen the hot news this week that not only did the governor say that if you were on the watch list, you could not open schools and had to remain off the watch list for 14 days before schools could open in person. Now there's a waiver process. So we're waiting on the Department of Public Health to give us better instruction about what that means, because waiving out of that, we want to understand that better. So we're pressuring DPH to give us better guidance on what they mean by that, because I know a lot of schools are eager to get the kids back in the classroom, and so we want clear guidance on, if you're going to give waivers, who deserves them, what's the state of public health that would allow for students to get back in the classroom. So the COVID-19 outbreak, we are, as you know, not where I think many of us would hope to be given the shutdown we saw in the spring. I think I was hopeful that we would curb the numbers and stay where we were, and we have not. We have gone back up. Our hospitalization numbers in Contra Costa County are higher than they were in the spring. Just yesterday, we passed 100 deaths in Contra Costa County, a milestone that I don't think any of us wanted to see, and is really a devastating milestone, because each of those 100 people is someone's family member that we've lost due to this virus. So we need to continue to do our part to get those numbers down, and we're working really hard to do that. The numbers do appear to be going down. I don't know if you track them as closely as I do, but we were at 8% about, and now we are down to 6% in community spread. That's a really, really good trajectory, down 2% in our community spread. The Department of Public Health said they start to worry when it's over 5. So being at 6 and getting closer to 5 is really remarkable, and we got to keep up the work we're doing to get us there. We also the reason we are on the governor's watch list is because we were over 100 cases per 100,000 residents in the county. And even just this week, we went from about 130 cases, I want to say, to 100, to closer to 110. So again, those numbers are going down as well. And we're close to that 100 marker to get off the governor's watch list. But we're doing that because we're being safer. And I guess I want to just take this moment to say, and I know all of you know, that even once we get off the watch list, and if that means some easing of restrictions, that we have to continue to be responsible because the virus has not gone anywhere, right? We are just practicing in way, we have practices that have helped to stop the community spread, or slow it, I wouldn't say stop, slow the community spread. And a lot of that is masking. So the thing that changed from the 8% to the 6% was the masking order. The county came out with a much stronger masking order. So for example, at outdoor dining, prior to that, you could not wear your mask the entire time you were at the table. Now you have to wear that mask at the table unless you are consuming food or drink. So most of the time you're sitting there, you're actually masked. They also put in the order that you need to mask even if you're outdoors when you're gathering with your family. So I know many people in the county have been gathering with friends and family outdoors, and many people were doing that unmasked. And one of the things that the county changed was they were asking people that even in those moments to wear masks, because as you can imagine, when you're laughing and talking, right, we know it's coming. If you are an asymptomatic carrier or you have it, that's when it's going to get spread, which often happens in fun family gatherings. So I urge all of you to continue to wear your masks at all times when not in your homes with your family members like you are right now. You know, just continuing to watch it, work with the county, really focused on how we have seen that most of the deaths in the county come from our congregate care facilities. So how do we really focus on that as a place that we need to, you know, get under control? I know many of you probably read, there was an article in the Chronicle yesterday about the congregate care facility on Tice Valley, where we've seen an incredible outbreak and a significant number of deaths. And it was not the first, right? I mean, I think Orinda was the first really big outbreak at a congregate care facility, and yet they continue to happen. And the county, since that original one, had changed their testing criteria at those facilities, that staff on a rotating basis are tested weekly, thinking that would really help us to know, because it's coming from the staff, right? Most of the people living in those facilities aren't leaving, and so the staff who come and go are the ones that we believe are carrying it into the facilities. And what else can we do, right? What can we do to change that? Because we know it's a place where if it gets in, there is just such a horrific toll. So that's a little bit on COVID, but I'm happy if anyone has any questions to answer them on that. Does anyone want to ask any questions on COVID before I move on? No? Okay, then I'll go on and talk a little bit about,
I do have one question.
Yeah, Marilyn.
And I emailed every member of the Danville Town Council on Sunday. I've heard from no one.
Okay.
Around Danville, people are not wearing masks. They're taking their kids to the playgrounds and ripping the yellow tape off of the playground equipment, and nothing is being done. There's too many people that either don't believe in it or say their rights are being messed up with, and I want to know what can be done to get these people wearing masks.
So you touched on something really important, which is enforcement, right? So we have these orders and there doesn't seem to be any enforcement. Now, I want you to know my story. So I needed an oil change. So, you know, an essential thing I had to go do. And I took the car into an oil change place, which maybe I should out, maybe I should not. And I walked in and nobody at the place, none of the employees were wearing masks. And I walked to the door and I saw that the man sitting at the counter wasn't wearing a mask. And I was like, I don't think I'm walking in there. And so I was sort of outside trying to figure what was going on. And then one of the guys walks up to me without a mask and wants to move my car. And I said, you're not getting into my car without a mask. Do you at least have a mask on to move my car? Oh no, we don't even have masks. So, so I then was like, okay, I'm going to report this. And nothing happened. I asked for a call back. They didn't know I was the assembly member, purposely. And I said, you know, I want to call back to hear what happened, what the follow-up was. Zero follow-up. So in the wake of that, Senator Glazer and I had a heart-to-heart, if you will, with the the County Department of Public Health, saying to them, none of this matters if you're not enforcing it. I mean, I was watching, and by the way, every customer who was walking in was wearing a mask, which was like, oh my gosh. So, and watching these customers' cars be moved by people who are unmasked, thinking, oh, you're going to get back in that car, right? So, so we followed up with Supervisor Anderson, and she has actually really taken it very seriously, this question of how we ramp up enforcement, because there really is an enforcement problem. And even in a business, right? I mean, businesses, we give a license to operate. They should be complying, right? So, so she is overseeing the county's effort to get more people on enforcement. So to date, it has just been an effort of local police departments and the DA's office. And what we're trying to do is get more people, you know, your meter maids, if you will, right? So the people who ticket, who are no longer doing that, other employees of the city and the county that are not currently actively in their jobs, can we get them on the enforcement trail to make sure that we're educating and getting people enforced? And we know that in parts of California, people are now actually starting to fine, right? So that we can get enforcement up. And I think the county is looking seriously at it, but it's a really important question. And I urge you to write Supervisor Anderson on the issue as well, because she has been the one who has taken that on as on the county level.
Thank you.
So the budget we passed. So, you know, I think I've only been in the legislature for 2 years, but most of my colleagues have been in the legislature during boom times, right? I mean, it's been a while since we've had a challenging budget, and this was by all means a very challenging budgetary cycle. And we had to cut $54 billion from the budget. And the May revise that came out was pretty upsetting to me and to many of my colleagues. We thought it didn't get it right. We thought that the cuts that were made in the May revise were to those that were most vulnerable and who California really most wants to protect. And so the legislature, in a miraculous step, got together, and the Senate and the Assembly agreed. We put out one budget. Usually each house puts out a budget, and this year we did not. The Senate put out a budget, and the Assembly said that's our budget. And we did that because we were aligned in knowing that we had to be 100% in force together if we were going to go in and save some of these cuts. And we saved almost all the ones that we felt were most critical. So schools, for example, which we're going to take a 10% cut in the May revise, do not take any cut in the budget that was finally passed, which is something I am so proud of as a school parent who knows that our schools are just getting by with the dollars that they have, and that a 10% cut to those budgets would have been devastating. And it would have definitely meant an increase in class sizes at a moment in time when we're supposed to be distancing our children rather than increasing the number of children in each classroom. So that was something that was really, really important. You know, there were other things that the Women's Caucus and that I were really, really focused on in the budget. One was there were significant cuts to healthcare, including Planned Parenthood would have lost most of its state funding. We were able to save all of those dollars, which is really significant because they get a 9-to-1 federal match, and we would have lost all those federal dollars. So the ability to protect that money for the Planned Parenthood clinics in California was really critical to women's health, and we were able to save that as well. Also, senior services. There were significant cuts to some of our best senior services programs, our programs that provide care for seniors who want to remain at home. And those programs are the ones that allow our seniors to be safe right now, right? I mean, we just talked about the congregate care outbreaks. And so for us to cut the programs that feed and care for our seniors who need extra assistance at home was untenable. Besides the fact that it saves us significant money to keep those individuals in the home they want to be in than putting them in congregate care facilities. So we were able to save those programs as well. So I think there was a lot in the final budget that we were really proud of. That being said, when you're making $56 billion in cuts, there are cuts and they're going to hurt, and that is true. So, you know, I think we did a good job of ensuring that the budget that we passed was one that reflects our values, that reflects protecting the most vulnerable Californians and the ones who need us most. But I know that the years ahead are going to be equally difficult from a budgetary perspective. All the economists are telling us that they're going to be harder than the one we just passed. And so we need to continue to keep our eye on the ball and make sure that we're protecting those who most need protection. My legislation, so I mentioned my education bill that's really focused on ensuring that we're closing that digital divide and getting students the devices they need and saving our districts from the cost. I mean, we had a couple of our school board members from Dublin testify. Megan Rouse and Amy Miller testified at the hearing on the bill and talked about the number. I mean, they'd spent over $1 million out of the Dublin budget on devices just to get kids connected that was completely unexpected. Our districts don't have $1 million sitting around they weren't planning on spending, right? So making sure that the state is supporting them is really critical. So that's a fun bill that we're excited to see moving forward, hopefully in the Senate, although the Senate is in the process of telling us which bills will move forward. So keep your fingers crossed for me. And then we have a bill, AB 2559, which we introduced before the pandemic, but I think becomes only more important in light of the pandemic. So bank lenders, so if you go out and take a loan from a bank, there are regulations that apply to them that allow you to get certain consumer protections if they do something wrong. And those same protections do not extend to non-bank lenders. So, we're seeing more and more of these financial tech companies turning into lenders, right? Lending people money, and they aren't regulated in the same way. And so we are extending those regulations to non-bank lenders to protect consumers from abuse in the process of getting a loan. And I think that the reason I say I think it's even more important given the pandemic is that as people are struggling so much to pay their rent and keep food on the table, making sure that they are not taken advantage of when taking those loans is really, really critical. So that bill is one we've continued to push forward and make sure we're moving. And I think Senate banking, it's in Senate banking, and I think we will have a hearing on that one as well. So I'm excited to make sure that we're protecting consumers from abuse in, getting a loan from like Quicken Loans, for example. They're not regulated in the same way as your average bank, and it just evens the playing field. And then lastly is a bill that we introduced that is sort of something that is a fire in my belly about the criminal justice system, which is that we, with realignment, more and more folks are being incarcerated at the county level. And so the state spends a lot of money sending money to the counties for rehabilitation programs to help those inmates make sure they get what they need. We have no idea how those dollars are being spent, whether the programs work, what they're doing with those dollars, and they refuse to tell us. Now, we are able to get that information from the state because we're all working together, but we can't get that from the county. We're giving them a lot of money, billions of dollars. So this bill merely requires them to report on what rehabilitation and recidivism programs are being done, how much of those dollars are being spent on the program, and then track the success of those programs. So does somebody who takes that program go on to recidivate within a year? Well, let me tell you, I don't think that program is very successful. So it's going to allow us, hopefully, to take those dollars, spend them on the programs that are actually working to get people to better outcomes in the criminal justice system and stop spending without having any clue of what's working or what's not working. When we first started, so our only opposition to the bill is the sheriffs, and they said to us, well, we don't want you to do that bill because you might take money away from us. And I said, well, I'm only going to take money away from the programs that aren't working. I'm happy to continue to fund the ones that are working. And so really, this is about making sure we're getting a return on those dollars that are coming to the county to help folks who are supposed to be getting help, but we're not sure they are. And that, again, I've made the argument, we have to make the argument on all of our bills of why it's really critical right now. And my argument on that bill is that as we cut our budget, we should do so with the information of what is working and what is not working. We should make good data-driven decisions on those dollars. And maybe there is a lot of money to cut there that we just don't know about. And so this is a way to make better budgetary decisions in the future using good information. So that's the three bills I have that are still moving through the legislature. I'd say I'm about to move on to wildfire, the other bill that I fought so hard to keep but did not succeed. And we will bring back next year and every year until I get it passed. Is a bill on utilities, making sure that our utilities are more responsible, which I think is an issue that's really, really important. So the bill was AB 2356, and it was a bill that's actually very, very simple. So currently, the utility is heavily regulated by the PUC. They have to trim their trees and make sure your lines are nice and safe. Now, as PG&E customers on this call, all of us, we know that that's not happening because we drive around our community, we see it, and then we see the fires that result from it. We just had one that the findings aren't complete, but is believed to be PG&E caused about 2 weeks ago, about a mile from my house. So what this bill did was currently there's a violation of some sort of health and safety regulation by the utilities. The only enforcement mechanism is to go through the PUC. It is my position the PUC has failed us. clearly. I think the evidence that they have failed us is out there, a lot of it. And so what all this did, and it was actually, DA O'Malley was my co-sponsor on the bill, was it would give that same authority to enforce regulation to our local district attorneys. So that if they were not maintaining the lines of the trees, the DA could go after them. And it was just a second line of attack on their failure to do the work that they are already obligated to do. And it's a bill that I love because it's actually super simple, and it just makes sure that there are belts and suspenders on the things that keep our community safe and will prevent utility-caused wildfires. But it didn't get heard in the Assembly Utility Committee. And, you know, he's not a PG&E customer, and I think he has a lot more faith in PG&E than I do, and that probably everybody on this call. So we're going to continue to fight for that bill. And I now have told him that every time there is a utility-caused wildfire in my district, I'm going to text him. And I did. So hopefully we will have a hearing after I text him the many, many, many times that we hear about utility-caused fires. But to that point, you know, I was just on a call yesterday with the president of the PUC about PSPS. We are living in really, really tough times, and PSPS is coming. Power safety, public safety power shutoffs, for those that don't know it by PSPS. So those shutoffs that all of us experienced for days on end last year, you know, so the standard that has been set is that they will be 30% better. Now that still means that my house, most of our houses were out for at least 8 days last year. So 30% means you'll still be out about 6 days, which to me is too many. But we've worked, you know, we are working to oversee and ensure that the PUC is doing what they can to improve it as much as possible. And that means a lot of things. I mean, the hospital closest to all of you at San Ramon Valley was shut off without any notification last year during the public safety power shutoffs. That cannot happen. That should not happen. They should know where they are shutting off the power, and hospitals should be notified. Now they have backup generation as required by law, but there's no excuse for that. And by the way, their outpatient center was kept on, which obviously is less important than the hospital where people are on life-saving devices. And so, you know, that is one of the things that I am really focused on is life-saving devices are critical infrastructure that must stay up, and then expanding the definition of critical facilities. So on the call yesterday, I raised the issue of our COVID testing sites. If we're down for 6 days and our COVID testing sites go down for 6 days right now, we're 6 days behind, and 6 days in this virus is a world of time. And if we hope to get kids back in school, we cannot not be testing for 6 days while our students are in school. So, so making sure, so I found out that SDG&E had put COVID testing sites on their critical facilities list, but PG&E had not. So for example, we're making sure that as we go into these power shutoffs, we have our, you know, we're making sure the things that need to stay up, and that you have as minimal impact as possible. Although again, safety first. I mean, I think all of us know that we would much rather be without power than suffer the way that Paradise did. But that being said, there should be an alternative besides shutting all of our power off for days on end. We should be able to be safe without that. And again, that goes back to my bill that got killed, and making sure that you're holding the utility responsible for the safety. They should be able to provide power and keep us safe. That is not too much to ask. And I will stand by that. So we are definitely keeping our eye on that, making sure that the funds, there are funds that continue to be allocated for wildfire abatement. So making sure that our fire departments have what they need to do the fire breaks and the work they need to prepare for wildfire season. So we continue to keep our eye on that as well. And lastly, I didn't want to speak without touching on the Black Lives Matter movement, which obviously is one of, you know, the things most people have at top of mind right now. And I have to say that as someone who has cared deeply about criminal justice reform for many years, since I was a baby lawyer in the criminal justice system, you know, it's wonderful to see it become such a hot conversation that people care so deeply about. And there's so much work to be done. And I think we see that. And you know, the murder of George Floyd, and watching, I mean, I don't know how many of you watched it, but the thing that was most, I mean, I don't know, there's so much about it that was upsetting, but watching just the lack of care about a human life that needs to change. We need humanity back in the system in every place, way, and shape and form. And that's something that we have talked about in the legislature, and we need to continue to talk about. It's been a topic of conversation around prison reform and police reform, and it needs to continue to be. So I want to thank a lot of you. We are getting a lot of calls in our office about criminal justice reform and injustice and inequality. Many of you probably are part of that conversation, and I really appreciate it. You know, we have done a lot of work on these issues already in the legislature. We passed the strongest use of force law in the nation last year before this movement, which I think we are really proud of, being ahead of the conversation. That was AB 392, Dr. Weber's bill, that was a really important step in ensuring that force is only used when absolutely necessary. But we continue to do the work that needs to be done to change what is happening. One of the things that my amazing colleague, Assemblymember Kamlager from Los Angeles, has been working on is the question of implicit bias in the system, and how do we treat the implicit bias that is resulting in all sorts of wrongful action throughout the system, be it the courts, the schools, or law enforcement. And she's carried a whole package of bills on all three of those issues that I was really happy to support, to make sure that we're getting the training we need out there to try to fight the implicit bias that is in all of us. But, you know, I think we're moving bills really directly on what has happened recently. So I'm co-authoring with Assemblymember Gibson a bill that would ban chokehold statewide. I'm optimistic. I think it has an incredible list of bipartisan co-authors, so I think that bill will do just fine and pass this legislative cycle. And there's a bill, I believe, that's moving on the use of rubber bullets, from what we saw, and the misuse of rubber bullets, making sure that those are only used properly and people aren't injured when expressing their First Amendment right to protest. And also, I know, because I think you guys have brought it up with me in the past, the sheriff oversight bill, which was passed in the Assembly last year, that I happily supported, but then got stuck in the Senate. This has given it renewed life. So I'm happy to see that bill continuing to move, and I think it is anticipating a vote in the Senate soon. So if you have opinions, call your senator. So there is a lot moving in the legislature to try to address some of these sort of core inequities. There's two wonderful bills on peremptory challenges, and really the core issue around juries and the fact that we don't have juries that are representative. They are not, you know, it is much harder for a person of color to get picked on a jury than a white person, and that leads to real systemic problems. And so there's a couple bills addressing that are wonderful, that I was happy to vote for. And then sort of the larger issue, I know that you probably are paying attention to ACA 5, which has now turned into Prop 16, which raises the question to you, the voters, about affirmative action, right? We passed Prop 209 a generation ago before I could vote. And the question will come back to the voters to decide whether we continue to believe that there should not be race or gender considered in public education, public contracting, and public employment. And it's an important question that really gets at these systemic questions of inequity in California. So, you know, we are continuing to work on all of this. There's ethnic studies bills that we're moving before this, that we continue to have robust conversations about how do we educate our youth to be more knowledgeable and understanding of our history and of how we want our future to be different. So, you know, a lot to talk about, but that's a little bit of my update, and I'm happy to take questions from all of you.
Rebecca, Ellis Goldberg here. Great to see you.
Good to see you too.
This club and the Tri-Valley Democratic Club have both just unanimously passed resolutions called Corporate Executive Perpetrator Responsibility Act. And it really goes to what you were talking about, PG&E. You said you were introducing legislation that would let the DA go after them, but you weren't really clear about who them is. Them is a corporation. You can't put a corporation in jail. You can only fine a corporation or put stipulations on them. And that kind of deterrent has not worked at all. This resolution calls for criminal penalties for those executives who put profit before health, safety, privacy, or the environment. So we're going into the age of COVID-19, and we're going to want to see factories and all kinds of businesses open. There will be corporate executives like Elon Musk who said, it's more important for me to open my Tesla factory than for people who are working here to be really safe. And the real fact of the matter is, if somebody was harmed by opening that Tesla factory, the only recourse they have is suing Elon Musk. And he just passes that on to customers and maybe even to stockholders. But he doesn't spend any time in jail. If Elon Musk was risking jail time by opening that factory, he may not have made that decision. Anyway, we're looking for a legislator, and I'm looking at her right now.
Well, so I guess I'm confused, Alice, and maybe I need to read it, and I apologize that I haven't.
Right. And
there
I'll
are
send you another copy of it.
white-collar crimes that people go to jail for. I mean, there are corporate crimes for which you can absolutely be given jail time.
Well, I'll give you a few examples. Boeing airplanes that they put up there that the pilots weren't sufficiently trained, nobody's even investigating them. Kamala Harris promised to go after the bankers who caused the mortgage fraud that had kids living in cars. Never happened. She didn't have enough evidence. They're selling my grandkids and your kids vaping. Nobody goes to jail for that. The opioid crisis, the guy who went to jail only went to jail for bribing doctors, not for killing people and destroying families. And I can go on for an hour or so.
Okay, so we should talk, because like the bank fraud, I mean, you can go to jail for that. That is a crime, let's be clear. So
Jamie Dimon is not in jail.
Go to jail. So I guess I'm a little bit confused. Maybe you think there aren't enough corporate crimes, but corporate crime is a thing.
Corporate crime is a thing that corporations are guilty of. PG&E
No. Individuals can absolutely go to jail. I mean, I did trade secret work, trade secret theft, for example. You go to jail. I mean, so you may not go to jail, but you could go to jail. You could serve jail time for that. So, so let's talk. Let me figure out a little bit more about what you're talking about.
With the PG&E executive subject to going to jail, 83 people died. It was PG&E's fault. The jury found that to be the case. No PG&E executive went to jail. They didn't even feel any harm.
Right.
Anyway.
Okay, so let's talk about it. The problem is most crimes require intent, right? So you have to prove intent. But
okay.
We'll talk about it more.
At another time. Okay.
Rebecca, I have a question from chat. It says, will your campaign need donations, and is ActBlue the best way to donate?
I don't know the answer. Go to my website. My website's always the best place to get information about my campaign.
Okay.
And that's Rebecca for Assembly.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. RebeccaForAssembly.com.
Do we have any more questions? Let's see.
Sharon has a question.
Oh.
Rebecca, the retired teachers are concerned that they could either get pension, or if they've worked at other jobs that have Social Security, they can't get them both. Can you do something about that?
Say it again. Wait, say it again. I'm sorry. Sharon.
Retired teachers if they've worked someplace else besides the schools, can only get a pension.
Right.
If they've got Social Security, they can't collect that also. Can you do something about that?
So I think that's a federal issue, but I can look into it because the Social Security piece.
Okay, thank you.
Might be federal, but we can look into it.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. Thanks for being here.
We have another question in chat. It says, okay, this is sort of personal. It says, how can I get you to to consider child abuse seriously and to update the laws to bring them up in sync with current knowledge so that children can be protected from abuse. I think this is from Raw Ziegenbaum, and maybe Raw, you need to get in touch with Rebecca personally and contact her office. Would you say that, Rebecca? I don't think she can make a statement about that right now.
We have been in contact with Raul. We're happy to continue talking with him, and we will explore that topic.
Thank you,
I believe
Sean.
we've actually already given an answer on that, but I'll take a look with my staff.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sean, to the rescue. We are nothing without the people who work with us. I just want everyone to know that. Sean's amazing.
Does Kathy Gage, Kathy's iPad, do you have a question for Rebecca? I guess not. Okay. Oh, here's one. This is from Stuart. Stuart, would you like to ask your question?
Are you talking to me?
Oh, I was. Did you just now unmute yourself? Yes.
I didn't realize I was muted. I just want to know how to get involved in her reelection campaign. I know this is off topic, but phone number, anything. I filled out a form. I haven't heard anything.
Oh, we got my campaign staff she's having a baby, I think next week. So she has not been, this is a problem. She should have planned her baby around my schedule. No, just kidding. I'm so happy for her. But yes, so the email is the same. Actually, it's Rebecca at
Holding.
what? So it's Rebecca for Assembly at gmail.com.
Okay.
That's where we respond from.
Thank you. And
Please write. Thank you, Kathy, for asking.
We have a question from Stuart. Stuart, would you like to ask your question?
My question is there a law in California which makes it illegal for the federal government to send in stormtroopers to arrest peaceful protesters without the request of the governor or a mayor of a city? And if there isn't, can we pass one?
You got some federalism issues there. We keep touching on, I can't control the president as much as I'd like to.
But if we had such a law on the books, would it not at least give us something in the courts that we could use when it happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting constitutional question, but we don't, I mean, right, there are states, federals, like there's federalism issues that result in him having powers that he can't use our state resources, right? That's what the sanctuary laws were around, right? So we control our resources, but we can't, there's very little we can do to stop, I think. So you need the federal government, call your congressman.
Rebecca, don't they have to be invited in by the governor?
Or
I
mayor?
don't believe so. I would be surprised if that were true.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, I could look into it. I don't know
Okay.
the answer.
Do we have any more questions?
But it's wrong. I'll say that. I don't like it.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure we're suing. Our wonderful attorney general likes to sue, so that's one of our best avenues of defense.
Do we have any other questions for Rebecca?
Well, thank you all for being here. And, we are here. Please feel free to reach out. Anytime you have questions. Like I said, my staff is remote in the district office, but they are available to answer questions. And
Rebecca,
here to serve.
we've enjoyed it so much, and you'll have to update us on the PG&E and let us know how you can help, how we can help.
I will.
Get it passed.
I'm dogged about that bill.
Yes, yes. It was fascinating hearing about all the legislation coming through. So we appreciate you being here. So thank you again. Thank you all for coming to our meeting. And Rebecca, we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thanks, Brody. Good
Thanks,
to see you.
Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Oh, she's
Thanks, Rebecca.
smart as a whip and
Okay.
Yeah.
We are done, right?
We
Had a
are
great
done.
percentage.